veiled tombs and timeless guards. Hidden behind the formidable grandeur of the Vatican's stone walls, there exists a realm not just of faith and reverence, but also of enigmas that continue to baffle historians and believers alike. Many associate the Vatican with papal authority, monumental cathedrals, and religious ceremonies. Yet beneath that solemn veneer lies an intricate tapestry of mysteries some documented, others merely whispered about in hushed circles. These riddles span centuries, intertwining biblical lore with accounts of ancient civilizations, especially those linked to Egypt. One of the most enduring of these enigmas revolves around the possibility that the final resting place of one of history's most legendary conquerors, Alexander the Great, may be tucked away in plain sight on the European continent. According to a provocative hypothesis that challenges long-held beliefs, Alexander's body might not lie beneath the shifting sands of Egypt or in the sun-scorched ruins of Alexandria. Rather, it could be enshrined somewhere in Italy, quietly misidentified as the body of a revered Christian saint. To understand why this hypothesis resonates so powerfully, we must reflect on Alexander's extraordinary life and the resonance he had across multiple cultures. After the young emperor's untimely death in 323 BCE, an event that itself remains shrouded in debate, his body was famously placed in a grand tomb in the city of Alexandria. This site became a focal point of pilgrimage where Roman emperors and other dignitaries reportedly paid their respects. Over the ensuing centuries, accounts of Alexander's burial place featured in travel, logs, and historical narratives, only to vanish without explanation. Scholars have long struggled to accept the notion that a monument of such renown simply disappeared. Even Julius Caesar, who set foot in Alexandria, supposedly gazed upon Alexander's tomb. It is inconceivable for many researchers that an edifice once celebrated throughout the known world could dissipate into legend. This skepticism has given rise to the claim that Alexander's remains might have been smuggled out of Egypt, especially during times of upheaval, when tombs and relics were looted for personal gain or political advantage. The theory goes on to suggest that a Venetian merchant acquired the body, transporting it across the Mediterranean and presenting it to the city of Venice as a precious relic. Over time, it was either mislabeled or intentionally rebranded as the body of Saint Mark the Evangelist, thus granting it a permanent place within the ecclesiastical framework. If accurate, this would mean that for centuries, Christian devotees have unwittingly venerated not a gospel writer, but one of the ancient world's most formidable conquerors, a figure whose empire once stretched from Greece to the edges of India. Such a possibility has profound implications for both Western and Eastern civilizations. Scholars note that it highlights the potent sway religious institutions hold over historical artifacts, a power that can alter the narrative of what is revered and why. If Alexander's corpse truly resides within a Christian basilica, then this saga represents one of the greatest historical ironies, a conqueror of unprecedented might, who subjugated swaths of the known world, now sanctified and venerated under a faith that emerged long after his empire collapsed. Whether this is mere speculation or reveals a shocking reality, it hints that the Vatican's secrets run far deeper than the rituals and doctrines openly displayed for believers across the globe. Woven into these Vatican-centric tales is another theory that bridges the ancient civilization of the Nile with the Christian story. The idea that the life and miracles of Jesus Christ may echo a much older narrative, that of the Egyptian god Horus. This hypothesis, sometimes referred to as the Horus theory, has been invoked to question the originality of Christian doctrine. Critics and comparative mythologists point out how Horus, venerated thousands of years before the birth of Christ, supposedly shares striking commonalities with Jesus, from a miraculous birth to healings and a resurrection. Such parallels, if factual, compel us to reconsider how religions evolve and appropriate motifs from one another. According to this line of thought, Horus was born to the goddess Isis, who was in certain texts described as a virgin. Some scholars claim that Isis's name or a variant of it can be linguistically linked to words sounding like Mary, thus fueling speculations of a direct correlation. Additionally, Horus's earthly father was said to be Osiris, or in some interpretations, a figure known as Seb, which occasionally prompts comparisons to Joseph, the biblical foster father of Jesus. Mythic narratives depict Horus undergoing trials, gathering devoted followers, performing miracles, and even experiencing a death-like state before a triumphant return to life. When recounted in broad strokes, these events bear a conspicuous resemblance to the core elements of Jesus' ministry and passion. Supporters of this theory argue that early Christians, in an effort to make the new faith more understandable to pagan converts, may have adapted readily recognizable themes from pre-existing religious traditions. This approach could have made Christianity more familiar and therefore more appealing to individuals steeped in the myths of other deities. Nevertheless, religious scholars and the institutional church vehemently challenge these assertions. They contend that many alleged parallels stem from loose translations or misinterpretations of Egyptian texts and artifacts. Some evidence cited in support of the Horus theory, they argue, originates from later periods or unverified sources, thereby weakening the case for direct one-to-one borrowing. Yet the idea refuses to fade, particularly in an age where rapid dissemination of information online enables fringe theories to gain traction rapidly. Even if some claims about Horus are exaggerated, or if certain parallels do not withstand scholarly scrutiny, the fundamental questions remain: how do religious motifs travel across cultures and epochs? Are we witnessing a continuous story where archetypal events, virgin births, divine child, Savior's miraculous healings are retold in different guises for new audiences? For believers, these inquiries can be unsettling, threatening the uniqueness and sanctity of their faith traditions. For historians and philosophers, however, these parallels offer fertile ground for exploring how myth, culture, and devotion converge to shape beliefs. The Catholic Church, historically speaking, has guarded its dogma by excommunicating or condemning heretical texts and interpretations that challenge foundational teachings. The Horus theory, therefore, is not merely a matter of folklore. It touches on the possibility that biblical narratives might be part of a grander tapestry of universal myth. Whether that possibility undermines or enriches religious conviction is a matter that calls for deep personal reflection. And here, once again, the Vatican stands as a potential reservoir of knowledge, holding archives and historical documents that could either confirm or dismantle certain aspects of this debate, if ever made available to the wider academic community. Lost libraries and secret exhibitions. Beyond these controversies linking Christianity and ancient Egyptian myth, there lurks another profound mystery: the fate of the legendary Library of Alexandria. Established in the 3rd century BCE, the library was part of a remarkable institution in a city renowned for its multicultural scholarship. Here, thinkers from Greece, Persia, Babylon, and even India converged, drawn by the Ptolemaic court's ambition to collect every text in the known world. With hundreds of thousands of scrolls lining its shelves, topics spanned mathematics, astronomy, geometry, medicine, history, literary works, and esoteric manuscripts. Many of the greatest minds of antiquity, including Archimedes and Euclid, are said to have been affiliated with this center of learning. Yet despite this illustrious heritage, almost nothing of the library survives today. No catalogue, no scraps of scroll, no definitive blueprint of its vast halls. Historians have long debated the library's demise. Julius Caesar is often implicated, accused of inadvertently igniting a fire during his siege of Alexandria in 48 BCE, a conflagration that some say spread through the city and consumed its trove of texts. Others speculate that successive waves of religious zealotry targeted the library's content, labeling certain works as pagan or heretical, thus consigning them to oblivion. Still others suggest a less dramatic but equally tragic fate, a slow and deliberate dismantling as powerful rulers moved the library's most precious scrolls to private collections or allowed them to decay through neglect. A particularly tantalizing theory posits that some of the library's rarest works, such as advanced treatises on anatomy, lost plays of the Greek tragedians, and curious maps hinting at unknown continents, escaped destruction. These were allegedly smuggled out of Alexandria and relocated to select repositories in Europe. And in this scenario, the Vatican often emerges as a prime suspect. The Vatican Apostolic Archive, previously known as the Secret Archive, is known to house a massive collection of manuscripts, some dating back many centuries. Rumors persist that somewhere deep in this labyrinth of documents, one might find the intellectual legacy of Alexandria. Though the Vatican has never publicly admitted to holding any manuscripts from the fabled library, the very possibility enthralls historians, conspiracy theorists, and seekers of hidden knowledge. Meanwhile, official statements from Vatican representatives emphasize that the majority of its archives are accessible to qualified researchers, provided they meet certain criteria and adhere to specific guidelines. Critics, however, question how extensive this access truly is, pointing to sealed vaults and restricted reading lists as evidence of deeper secrecy. Whether these policies are simply standard protocols to protect fragile ancient documents or a deliberate effort to keep certain histories under lock and key remains a matter of debate. Should any part of the library's fabled collection reside within those Vatican walls, it would represent an unbroken link to the intellectual achievements of classical civilization, insights into a world long gone, and perhaps a chance to rectify the erasures that time, conflict, and religious orthodoxy have inflicted upon human knowledge. Evidencing this intricate relationship between Catholic institutions and Egyptian heritage is the Gregorian Egyptian Museum, established by Pope Gregory XVI in 1839. At a time when Egyptology was capturing European imaginations, fueled by Napoleon's campaigns and the ensuing decipherment of hieroglyphs by Jean-François Champollion, collectors and explorers raced to gather mummies, statues, and artifacts from the tombs along the Nile. The Gregorian Museum was founded right in the heart of the Vatican to showcase the Holy See's portion of these treasures. many of which had arrived in Rome centuries earlier as spoils of war or as curiosities to adorn the palatial homes of the elite. Within this museum's 9 galleries, visitors can marvel at statues of Egyptian gods delicately carved, relief sarcophages, and even preserved human remains that echo the funerary rituals of ancient Egypt. While the museum stands as a testament to the Vatican's complex engagement with world cultures, it also raises questions about how exactly these antiquities were acquired. Some of these relics originate from Rome's imperial triumphs in the aftermath of the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, when the forces of Octavian, the future emperor Augustus, defeated Cleopatra and Mark Antony. In the wake of this victory, Egyptian temples were pillaged and prized artifacts were transported to the empire's capital as trophies. Over centuries, many of these objects filtered into various private and ecclesiastical collections, eventually finding their way into what became the Vatican museums. For modern-day Egyptians and advocates of cultural repatriation, this history stirs deep emotion. In recent decades, there have been growing calls to return looted artifacts, especially mummies and sacred objects that had been removed under colonial or imperial conditions. The Vatican, like other major museums around the world, has faced pressure on whether to restore certain key items to their lands of origin. While some institutions have begun to repatriate select pieces, the question of who truly owns the relics of antiquity remains a philosophical and ethical quandary. Are such items part of a universal human heritage best shared in renowned collections for global audiences, or should they be returned to their native soil as an act of restoration for once subjugated peoples? In the Vatican's case, the dilemma is even more layered. The Catholic Church has long projected itself as a guardian of art and knowledge, pointing to the Vatican Museum's function in preserving works from all over the world. Critics, however, argue that these collections often symbolize a legacy of conquest and appropriation, reminding us that the Church was not only a spiritual institution, but also a considerable temporal power throughout history. Even as Pope Gregory XVI's Egyptian Museum invites visitors into a lavish display of pharaonic splendor behind the carefully curated exhibits, lies a tangled narrative of how those relics were uprooted, transported, and enshrined in a context far removed from the spiritual traditions that once gave them meaning. In this respect, the Gregorian Egyptian Museum serves both as a window into distant antiquity and a mirror reflecting Europe's and, by extension, the Vatican's complex legacy of cultural exchange, domination, and preservation. Hidden texts and hallowed preservation, shifting our focus from physical artifacts to clandestine writings, we encounter another layer of Vatican intrigue, the so-called forbidden teachings of Jesus. Nowhere is this more vividly exemplified than in the story of the first apocalypse of James, a fragment discovered in the arid expanses of Egypt where ancient refuse dumps often yield papyrus treasures. This particular text, believed by some scholars to be part of the broader Gnostic tradition, offers a radical cosmology that departs from the accepted Christian canon. In this alternate theological framework, the material world is not a divine creation overseen by a loving God, but rather a cosmic prison molded by a malevolent or lesser deity. The savior figure in this context is someone who imparts secret wisdom to liberate souls from their earthly chains. For centuries, the institutional church labeled such manuscripts heretical, a stance that aligned with the formation of a formal biblical canon in the early centuries of Christianity. Gnostics, with their emphasis on hidden knowledge, gnosis, and an often dualistic worldview, posed a direct threat to the burgeoning orthodoxy. Many Gnostic texts were systematically destroyed or hidden away. And while not all Gnostic beliefs are uniform indeed, the movement spanned various sects and nuanced doctrines. The notion of a clandestine Jesus, imparting esoteric truths to only a select few disciples, was enough to galvanize efforts to suppress these texts. The Vatican's archives have long been rumored to contain a range of early Christian writings that never made it into the official Bible. These might include alternate gospels, correspondences between early Christian leaders, and treatises that challenge the core dogmas of mainstream Christianity. Such rumors fuel endless speculation, from mild curiosity to conspiracy-laden claims asserting that the Church actively withholds potentially earth-shaking documents. While historians generally believe that most key Gnostic texts have already been discovered outside of Vatican repositories, such as those found at Nag Hammadi in 1945, there remains a lingering sense that more could be hidden in sealed vaults, their contents too destabilizing for public exposure. In the modern era, official Catholic teaching acknowledges the existence of apocryphal and Gnostic writings, viewing them as valuable for historical understanding, yet outside the realm of Orthodox faith. Nonetheless, the tension persists. How does one reconcile the possibility of suppressed scriptures with the Church's mission to reveal spiritual truth? Some argue that unveiling all relevant texts, even those that challenge long-standing theology, would demonstrate transparency and commitment to truth. Others worry that such disclosures could cause confusion or spiritual harm among the faithful. The mere presence of these debates highlights how deeply the specter of hidden knowledge still resonates within Christianity. Even today, the notion that a shred of papyrus might upend centuries of doctrine underscores the delicate balance between faith scholarship and institutional authority. Not all of the Vatican's secrets revolve around texts or rumors of lost tombs. Some are quite tangible, like the two mysterious mummies once believed to hail from the sands of ancient Egypt, proudly displayed for generations in the Vatican's collections. When experts from the Smithsonian Institution conducted a series of examinations, they were astonished to learn that these purportedly ancient remains dated back only about 5 centuries, placing them in the Middle Ages rather than the era of the pharaohs. This revelation unearthed a peculiar story, evidently in 19th century Europe. A widespread fascination with all things Egyptian had spawned an intense demand for mummies. So-called mummy unwrapping parties were even held by the aristocracy, and powdered mummy was misguidedly touted as a medicinal cure-all. Against this cultural backdrop, fabricating mummies to meet market demand became an unscrupulous but lucrative enterprise. The Vatican's 2 Egyptian mummies thus turned out to be deliberate forgeries, possibly intended to satisfy collectors or institutions eager to display such relics. Whether the Church itself was duped or complicit remains unknown, but the story epitomizes how mania for the exotic can lead even venerated institutions astray. Yet as startling as fake mummies are, they pale in comparison to the intricate rituals the Vatican has employed to preserve the bodies of revered figures in its own faith tradition. One of the most eye-opening revelations is that many so-called incorruptible saints, whose bodies supposedly resist decay due to divine grace, were actually aided by advanced embalming techniques. and these techniques bear an uncanny resemblance to the mummification methods that ancient Egyptians perfected millennia ago. The body of Pope John XXV, for instance, remains remarkably intact, displayed within a glass coffin that continues to astonish pilgrims. Official accounts suggest that modern embalming procedures discreetly executed account for his seemingly incorrupt state. Though this might disappoint those who believe such preservation to be purely miraculous, it does not negate the deep sense of veneration these figures inspire. Instead, it raises questions about how religious symbols are constructed and maintained. If science and specialized care can render a corpse pristine decades after death, what does that imply about the nature of relics and the line between the miraculous and the manufactured? The case of Pope Pius XIV exemplifies the potential perils of this procedure. In a misguided attempt to mirror the burial rites of Jesus Christ, his body was sealed in an enclosed space after being wrapped in linen. Lacking proper embalming, his remains began to decompose, rapidly emitting a stench so unbearable that guards reportedly fainted. This incident serves as a sobering reminder that even the Church's most hallowed practices can falter without careful preparation. Nonetheless, the mythos surrounding incorruptibility persists, inspiring awe among the faithful and underscoring the Church's broader pursuit of sanctity in a mortal world. In examining these intersecting narratives, fake Egyptian mummies, advanced preservation of papal figures, and the possibility that entire troves of lost knowledge are ensconced in Vatican vaults, we see a complex institution that has long stood at the intersection of religion, power, history, and myth. The Vatican is not just a holy city, but a custodian of stories that can reshape our understanding of ancient and modern worlds alike. Whether we confront theories of Alexander's misplaced tomb, echoes of Horus in Christian doctrine, or remnants of Alexandria's storied library, potentially hidden behind sealed doors, each mystery beckons us to question official narratives and consider how history is recorded, retold, or concealed. In the end, these 7 chilling Vatican-Egypt mysteries speak to broader human fascinations. The allure of forbidden knowledge, the desire for relics promising a touch of the sacred, or the exotic and the persistent hope that somewhere locked away from public eyes lies a hidden key to the unanswered riddles of our past. Will these secrets remain forever shrouded in stone corridors and ancient documents? Or might future generations bring them to light as new technologies emerge and scholarly inquiries intensify? Perhaps we stand closer than ever to uncovering truths that once seemed forever lost. If this exploration has awakened your curiosity or stirred your skepticism, let your voice be heard. These are not merely relics of old civilizations or archaic manuscripts. They are pieces of a shared human heritage, beckoning us to look deeper, question more boldly, and remain open to the ever-unfolding tapestry of history. That concludes all 3 parts of this expanded exploration. Feel free to share your reflections on each part before proceeding further.